Folks, welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're back to part two of the offense against the Browns, and we have our friend Jason Smith of Huddled Up Films back in to talk about the offensive line first, and then a little bit about the individual skill position players that we'll go through, and we'll finish that up with some MVP voting from this game. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me back. Good first show. Go listen to that, and we'll get into some fun stuff here with this one.
Yeah, make sure you give that a download. Got some great stuff in there. Just to recap that show, Jason analyzes some of Lamar's top throws in a way, and we had some interesting discussion about that. We talked a little bit about some various metrics of success in terms of points per drive and series success rate, and how the Ravens may not be able to replicate some of the success they've had there so far, so they need to improve the other. We talked injuries, of course, in terms of where things are going. The Ravens' dire situation at tackle, and what the Ravens tried to do a little bit in this game against the Browns in terms of making up for the fact that their tackles were naked to the world in terms of some of the best edge rushers in the game.
Yeah, let's talk about it, Ken. Let's talk about this offensive line, because tackle has got to be the number one concern on this team right now.
It certainly was. Let's jump right in, talk about Patrick McCary, if that's okay. Completely overwhelmed by Myles Garrett in this game. Overmatched would be a better way to say it, I think. Gave a 1 2/3 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, 2 pressures, and a quarter of a charge for a penetration. That is a lot of pressure events to give up in a short game, and in particular in a game where you only have 22 pass results. So passes or sacks, there were only 22 of those. He blocked for the cycle of negative events, which means he had at least one of every negative events that included an offensive holding call. He does get the maximum possible adjustment for facing Garrett. So I do the most I can in terms of that. But the adjustment scale I use will only allow me to give as much as 0.1 to a player for the amount above the replacement level that his opponent is, plus other factors that are not included in the system. So some games he might recover a fumble, as Zeitler did once this year, and he got a boost for that. In other games, a center might have a bad snap that gets away from the quarterback, and I take his whole adjustment away for that. Last week, it was a sack that Lamar got out of that I took McCary's adjustment away from, so it was worth about 3 points in total for doing that. In this case, he deserved the maximum adjustment. Obviously, a very tough outing. Monken did not have him blocking at the line of scrimmage all game. We talked a little bit about other methods that the Ravens used to try and put multiple bodies, multiple traffic cones in some cases, in the way of Myles Garrett on his way to the quarterback.
He needs it. If anybody deserves it, it is him. I go back and forth with the best pass rushers in the league, but it seems like every time I watch Myles Garrett, I think it's him. So tough job for McCary, who did, I guess, pretty well against Trey Hendrickson, another good pass rusher. Yes. This was the opposite for McCary, definitely. So do you have anything else on?
Yeah, I got a little more. I got a little more on McCary here. So four missed blocks. Only one of those was a loss at the line of scrimmage. Now I separate those blocks into 2 categories. Misses are total times where he didn't make the block he was supposed to make. It can be in level 2. It can be on a pull. Those are typically less serious. If those occur, you may just not have a player to block on a pull. But when you lose at the line of scrimmage to the man directly opposite you, that's a bad thing. You don't pick up a stunt, that falls into that category. That's a loss at the line of scrimmage. He did have 8 blocks in level 2 in this game. One bad thing, he only had half a point among 3 pulls, and that's because he allowed a quarter of a penetration on 1 pull as that goes. Somebody's asking me, is it reasonable for me to divide up fractionally these things? And all I can say is, you may not agree with every judgment I make on how I divide up a penetration or a sack into smaller components than 1, but I can be a lot more accurate than somebody who only has a 0 and a 1 in their toolbox of possible outcomes. So I'll at least say that.
Absolutely.
Had 1 pancake, 3 highlights. Those are good combination blocks in his case. F for the game, he at 0.39, upgraded to 0.49 after adjustment. He still left him 11 points short of a passing grade at tackle. I think the only thing I can draw from this game positively for him is it was not a complete fall off the table game for him. Bad, no doubt about it. Can't have that happen every week, no doubt about that. But he didn't completely fall over the table against first, second, and third best pass rusher in the entire NFL.
Absolutely agree. So at left guard, John Simpson, aggressive player. Ken, I've liked his aggressiveness. I think he gets a little bit sloppy sometimes, gets over his head. I know that you're going to mention, he balance on the ground a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen that. But, overall, Ken, my thoughts before we get to his grade is I think that he's done better than we could have expected for a player that was stashed. You would like to see Salah take a hold of that job, but wanted to give some credit to John Simpson for holding his own and being a good run blocker so far this year. So what did you have on him on this game?
So, some mixed results. Honestly, wasn't his best game so far. In fact, it might have been his worst game of the season because he's been like twice at a B- level and a C also, I believe, so far. But he regressed this week, had a holding flag, and he'd been doing okay in terms of his flag. He had one game with 2, and now he's had 2 holding penalties and a false start, which unfortunately is looking a lot more like what he did at Oakland. In 1,545 snaps there, he had 17 penalties, 13 holds. I know these numbers by heart now. 13 holds, 2 personal fouls, and 2 false starts. So he's had more than a penalty per 100 snaps, and unfortunately, he's kept up that rate in his games with the Ravens, which is not a good thing. So I had hoped they would be able to help him get past some of that, particularly on when he releases a block, when he's aggressively holding jersey on the inside. In this game, a third of a sack, 1 penetration. He was late on a help block for that sack. 1 penetration. He had a terrible week on pulls last week. He was 2 of 7. This week, 7 of 8. So really nice comeback there in terms of what he did. Still got that balance issue. Very vulnerable to the push-pull move, or whatever you want to call it. It's usually he kind of pushes he gets kind of pushed on by the opposing defensive tackle who grabs a bit of jersey, and then that defensive tackle is able to pull him forward because Simpson overcompensates by being unbalanced. And he's a guy definitely who gets out front of his feet a fair amount when he's blocking. And he's built like a tackle and not a guard. I'll ask you this, Jason. How upset would you be if the Ravens decided all of a sudden with their woes at tackle to move John Simpson there and try somebody else at guard?
Well, I wouldn't say upset. I'd say nervous as heck. Because he was a straight guard in college too. So I've never even seen him play tackle. So I'll be trustful with the coaches. They're going to have to catch me with that one.
A trust fall. There you go. He is a guy with exceptional length, by the way, for a guard. He's over 34 inches. So in some ways, he might fit into the tackle consideration. We know we don't have acceptable feet with Faalele at right tackle. It would be my feeling that Simpson might be the next guy at left tackle if something were to happen this week, say, and the Ravens don't have a better situation available, that he might be the guy who has to play there. I don't think it's Salah. I think if Salah, I think Cleveland comes into the game at left guard. I think you move Simpson to left tackle if something would happen.
Maybe I was just going to say, I know Cleveland just played on the right side during the preseason, but Faalele just really scares me. But I stick to the script here. When Simpson gets over his skis is a good way to put it.
Yep.
Old football term that should paint the picture. He just gets a little too far out in front of himself, and there's balance issues. We'll rear his head, but again, I expect some up and down play. If we can just eliminate the penalties with Simpson, that'd be half the battle.
Yeah, it might be more than half, but yeah, it's a big part of his deductions, that's for sure. So yeah, it would be a big thing. 6 missed blocks in this game for Simpson, 4 losses at the line of scrimmage. That's kind of a lot for one game, but he is a player who tends to accumulate them by getting put on the ground, being a pancakey on some plays. Anyway, make sure I'm dealing with the correct data here. But I think that's most of what I have to say about Simpson. A D for the game. This week, like I gave you 7 of 8 in polls, 1 level 2 block and 4 pancakes in this game. Actually, that's not bad at all. Put the other guy on the ground 4 times. That's unusually high. I'd say you get about 1 5 pancake game per year from the entire offensive line, if you're lucky. So
even that seems high. Even that seems high to me, Ken. Yeah, you get a couple of pancakes. That's good in that aspect of the game. Of course, highlight blocks come in different forms, like you said with McCary, where he's climbing and getting a quick linebacker at the second level. That's more difficult sometimes than pancaking somebody who's reaching for a running back. But yeah, Simpson's got power. Got power. His skill set is interesting mix to me, Ken, because he looks like he'd be better in power. I had a friend, Sanjeet, the football scout, on with me, saying that he was a better zone blocker, and that kind of showed up for me.
I thought the same thing. That he basically was very adaptable in the preseason. First of all, had incredible preseason. It wouldn't have mattered that Saleh wasn't ready to play the position. Simpson played it at what looked like a very exciting level in that preseason, and he was getting most of the first team reps against. Obviously it's not all great players, but you're getting the best the other team has to offer, and you're getting Tampa Bay's regulars for when you're for a portion of when you're in the game anyway. He looked just terrific doing it. But the other thing that impressed me was that he seemed to be fairly adaptable between zone and power schemes, is that he looked like he could pull some. He looked like his spacing was good on zone movement, and he's got long arms and not afraid to have to go out and reach for somebody as needed when he's zone blocking. So I thought pretty adaptable to either scheme.
And let's remember here something that was pointed out to me. It doesn't get much more different in schemes than what he had with Gruden and what he had with Josh McDaniels. So he's right guard, left guard, power zone. He kind of played it all. And Sanjeet mentioned that probably contributed to his struggles. So next to him at center, though, Ken, Tyler Linderbaum, first game back. Shout out to Linderbaum for coming back so quickly, which looked like a much worse injury than 2 weeks or whatever he missed. Tough guy. How did you grade him?
Yeah, excited to have him back for certain. He did not have a great game, but it wasn't a terrible game either. And in terms of first game back, if you can get a C out of Linderbaum, which is what he got in this game, I think that's pretty good. He only had one negative event, which was a half a penetration that he got beat on, other than a false start penalty. And I actually did not go back to look at that false start. I think it was Mike Preston had blamed that on Moses and not Linderbaum. So I'm gonna have to go back and see if they both moved at the same time this time. But I think it might have been Linderbaum moved the football and other linemen got off because of that. So they called it on 64 anyway. So I left the scoring with him there. 6 missed blocks in the game. That's kind of a lot for a center to have in one game. 3 of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. 2 of those were problems on stunt pickups, which have been a problem for him in the past, that he hasn't either been there to pick up the stunt or something else goes wrong in terms of the handoff. And it can be a length issue in those cases. And I don't want to go back to the old arm length thing on a lot of things, because what one of my issues with this Linderbaum is, but he can get very off balance on plays where and it's not the same kind of off balance as Simpson, when he's stunted into by a guard, a particularly large man who is moving across, not a guard, I think it's a tackle is moving across a guard's face. And what the typical result of that is that he's getting pushed back and elevated. So he's off balance and oftentimes on one foot when that happens. In the case of Simpson, it's almost always been a case of he overcommits forward and gets pulled forward by the defensive tackle. But Linderbaum is a different cat in that regard. Got pretty good balance. That's not really the issue. The issue is he's just overwhelmed by the length of the opponent.
Getting uprooted a little bit.
Yeah. So 3 level 2 blocks for Linderbaum, 3 out of 4 on pulls, 1 highlight combination block, a C for the game. From not knowing what to expect from Linderbaum in terms of his, ongoing nature of the injury progression, in terms of the recovery, I'm very happy with that, and obviously happy to have him back. Sam Mustipher got in the game late, made 3 out of 3 blocks. Great to see him continue to be on the field, and I'm not sure, maybe Mustipher is a backup guard as well in this scheme if the Ravens need that to happen. But they've got some options as things move forward. They really do have, at this point, since Falele is on the field, and he's one of 2 guys I'd label as not ready to be on an NFL field along with Saleh, they have 7 other guys who can really play offensive line at this point in their careers. And that's unusual for an NFL team to have guys who are above, probably every single one of them above the replacement level, that are ready to go right now. But one of the problems is that Saleh Faalele has to be the 8th guy and he has to play, and Salah is the 9th guy, and there's no reason to have a 9th offensive lineman in an NFL game. So
pretty funny at the end of that game, though. You had Faalele, Ben Cleveland, Sam Mustipher, Simpson, and McCary as your starting 5 across the line. And I was like, man, it's a good thing it's garbage time, because I wouldn't have imagined that setup before the season started. So a C for Linderbaum. Right next to him, Kevin Zeitler. Ken, I think you're going to say the same thing here, but not a great start to the season for Zeitler. He seemed to bounce back very nicely in this game.
Yeah, pretty disastrous start to the season for Zeitler. And he's had 2 bad games in a row for the Ravens, but he hasn't really had as bad a 3-game stretch as he did to start the season here. And it was really nice to see him come back from that 2.5 sack effort versus the Colts, where he was really not in the right place. He had some missed blocks. He had some other places where he just seemed overwhelmed as a pass blocker in terms of getting pulled. And it wasn't by great players. Taven Bryan, I think, got him against the Colts for a bull rush sack. So that's something you wouldn't expect necessarily to happen. But it gave up a full pressure for his only negative event in this game. 8 missed blocks. That is a lot for Zeitler, but 4 of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. Still a little bit of cause for concern there, particularly in a 55-snap game. If it had been a 70-snap game, maybe you roll that up to 11 missed blocks, say, and that would really look not good. But anyway, because of the other negative events, he's pretty good scoring overall. 3 out of 5 on pulls, 2 blocks in level 2, 1 pancake. No highlight in this game, but some of that's a function of scheme where he doesn't really have an opportunity to climb. He's more frequently the trailer, and that was probably true in this game a little bit. B- after adjustment for Zeitler. Thought he played really well, and the Ravens need him to be the North Star, the glue for that offensive line, if you will, the rest of the way.
So, Ken, just to ask you here, blip on the radar here to start the screen or to start the season, or true cause of concern after how great Zeitler was last year and really 2 years?
You know, we've had that question a lot. It's kind of like the Adley Rutschman, when are you going to bring him up to the major leagues question for Oriole podcasters out there. But what I will say is that I don't know. Okay, and the reason I don't know is because his age. At some point, he will no longer be able to play NFL football. I would have thought he would still be able to play based on how I would project a normal degradation for 1 year of age, at age 33, I think it is now, to be able to still play. And, Zeitler was talking about, I want a new contract before the season. So it's not like he's given up on the game or anything like that. He's probably one of the best linemen ever to not make a Pro Bowl. If you look at all the guys who've never made a Pro Bowl in NFL history, Kevin Zeitler would be way up there in terms of player quality of players. And so it is surprising to me that he started off so poorly, but I'm still hopeful that that he can return and be pretty good. Morgan Moses off to a very good start this year before he got hurt in the game. So I'm still hopeful that Zeitler can be good for Faalele, and the fact that he did so with 27 snaps of Faalele next to him in this game is probably a good indicator. Where are you on that?
There you go. No, I'm around the same thing. It's just you never know when a player is. It could be age related. It could be injury related for younger players when they're just not going to be right for the rest of that year.
Right.
They could have a great season the year before, and even when a younger player say, "Oh man, he was playing with a sprained ankle all year or a banged up knee," and the team really didn't say it, and he's toughing it out. But with Zeitler, obviously age is a factor, and he's a dedicated dude too, Ken. Like he's coming prepared. Yeah,
with the way he's always doing his rep after rep in his maternity room with his wife, right? That's great stuff.
He's not slacking. He's thinking about the game of football 24/7. So, and he, of course, didn't play much in the preseason. Looked healthy, as fresh as he could be. So, I'm nervous. I'm just nervous about the line overall, Ken. I think that's where it's coming from.
I think fans do an absolutely terrible job as a group in expecting decline due to age from players who are like 28 and up. I'll start with, but definitely 30, 32, even for a lineman. They'll make excuse after excuse why something is not age-related decline. And the fact of the matter is, anytime a player, certainly 30 or older, can maintain their level of play to the next season, it is a enormous victory for the team to have that occur. Matt Burke was a guy, came to the Ravens with 6 Pro Bowls, and amazingly, he was every bit as good, if not better, in his time with the Ravens. And that just does not happen very often, and you got to appreciate it when it does. And I think the other thing the Ravens need to be really careful about this, and Kevin Zeitler will earn some money next year, I think, somewhere. But the Ravens need to be very careful that they don't end up with the old maid in their hand in terms of a contract that's not going to be played to completion with Zeitler or any other player that they might sign later in their career with Jackson on a second contract. They just can't afford to have dead money on a contract.
Yeah, I'm feeling the stress at basically every position but center at this point, Ken, as far as long term. I mean, next year it's got to be spent in the trenches, both sides of the ball, really, but especially offensive line. You may need 2 new tackles. You may need 2 new guards. Needs a strong word. You're not going to get it all in the draft, but you're going to have to address these positions long term, especially the bummer the way Faalele has looked this year. But speaking of that, Morgan Moses, very steady player for us. Thought he was playing some good football. Had to leave the game early. Ken, how did you think he played before he had to leave?
Yeah, it wasn't a great game, but he didn't have any negative events, and that's really the most important thing. He avoided pass blocking errors. He had a false start, his only negative play. It did stall that first drive. So I think they had a 2nd and 4, and they made it 2nd and 9 again. Then they didn't get the first down, and you get pissed off about it. But what are you going to do? 7 missed blocks among only 28 snaps. That's really bad. 5 of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. Again, not good. So some of that was getting pushed back into the area of Lamar where it looked like it would have broken down and created a pressure, but the ball was out quickly. So those are cases where Lamar is not taking a less advantageous throw necessarily because Moses is losing the block, but one that if he was waiting for a route to develop, he would have had trouble with what was happening. 1 level 2 blocks, 0 pancakes, 4 to 4 on pulls. His 2 freebies is the trailer among those 4 to 4. He almost never gets those. He almost always finds somebody who's one of the greatest pullers in terms of the backside of counter plays the Ravens have ever had and I've ever scored. But he's very mobile in terms of getting things. He's been one of the big shockers with Moses is just how good he is on those. Monken is not afraid to use his mobility, which I really like. And probably the biggest example of this is the touchdown run by Lamar, the first one. Moses was way out of the play and everybody was taken care of. There's nobody for him to block. He got a free point as the trailer on the counter, and that's an example where he did everything he could, and Lamar was just skating into the end zone on his own.
Well, and it probably bummed him out to get that freebie because he definitely likes to hit. He definitely likes to take advantage of those little guys on those pulls, man. As we've seen, no mercy, and he's been a blessing here. We really need him healthy. So I don't see a grade, Ken, for him, and I'm curious if going up against Darius and company for this game helped him bump up his score.
C- for Moses. Now, that was actually very good for the Ravens tackles, who were an aggregate F between both spots. In fact, both spots were an F. It wasn't like they were an aggregate F in total. McCary was an F all by himself, playing all the snaps, and the C- and the F for Faalele, we're going to get to in a second, were an aggregate F on the right side as well. So actually, in context, I thought he played reasonably well. There's nothing wrong with a C anyway in terms of what's going on, particularly if you're going against a really good pass rusher and even with adjustment, which might not completely make up for the ground that's necessary. I just want to bind it in some way. It's getting a C against a good pass rusher, I consider to be a pretty good result.
There you go. So Faalele, Ken, what are the Ravens going to do here? You have to give your analysis here about its blocks, but I don't think he needed to study the film to see what happened. And it kind of reminded me of his first ever game. Can't remember when it was, but he was emergency left tackle, was it? Where he was pushed in and was just completely overwhelmed, and we had to change the game. You can't have that at tackle. In
that first game, that was against New England last year in week 3. He had a terrible first 10 snaps where he allowed 2 sacks to Dietrich Wise of New England. And then he actually had a pretty clean sheet in the second half. Mostly was making his blocks. He had a few misses, but he's mostly making his blocks, and he didn't have any negative events in the second half, is my recollection. There was no such recovery in this game. He had played 27 snaps, 1 pressure, 1 quarterback hit, 1 full sack, 4 missed blocks. 2 of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. So you project that out over a full game, it's 8 missed blocks out of 55 would have been really bad. 1 level 2 block, no pancakes. I want to see him finish some blocks. Got to put the other guy on the ground. It's part of the fun of playing football, I would think, but also tires the other players out to be put on the ground. Fall on them once in a while. Come on. And anyway, no pancakes in the game. 1 out of 2 on pulls. His 1 point came as a freebie on a trailer. So you heard me talk about that in terms of Moses. I don't need to explain it more.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Ken.
F in terms of raw score.
There you go. Sorry about that. I thought you needed a break there, so I was trying to pick you up. But yeah, a question for you, Ken, here. So, okay, let's just go hypothetical here. We need McCary to spend this week at left tackle again. And Moses is going to need some time to recover from this shoulder, pec, whatever injury he's got going on the right side. You don't get to see practice. You just get to pick one. Cleveland, Faalele, right tackle this week.
Actually, that's a really interesting question because it would be a complete reversal of the Ravens' demonstrated trust for Cleveland to suddenly decide he's the right tackle, even though Faalele is completely raw and a pure developmental player. Cleveland is a third-year player. I don't think he's a developmental guard anymore. I mean, the Ravens may say they can't trust him at guard, but I don't think he's a developmental guard anymore. It's an interesting question. By the way, would really be funny if Cleveland ends up being the choice at right tackle, because as a rookie, I thought Cleveland, given his average length, might be a guy that ended up at right tackle because it just seemed like a reasonable thing. You're going to run power, as the Ravens want to do in that era. I thought that might make a lot of sense. People put me down for that like nobody's business.
Oh, I argue with you a little bit, Ken. I thought that was a little too out of the box for me. I thought he's got right guard written all over him. Now, I will say, to answer my own question there, I'd be shocked if then Cleveland would start at right tackle because of what you said, Ken. They're gonna stick with Faalele. I just wanted to hear Ken McCusick's. If you're Harbaugh, were there is your confidence that shot in Faalele to where do you think he can recover like that Patriots game, or do what would you do? Would you have a quick hook after a couple of series? How would you handle this?
And it is possible. The Ravens certainly have a history of alternating series, or more often alternating quarters for offensive linemen, so they might try and do that. And they're obviously playing that kind of game right now with Darby and Yasin on the defense, so it certainly could occur. But if I've talked about the unbalanced line being a major component of what I think the Ravens will do this next week. I think they're gonna go to it at length with Faalele in there. I think actually that would be a great situation for Cleveland also, and actually puts him in a position where he would be very accustomed to playing on the inside, being the tucked player on those times. So you deal with him at right tackle when you have him out there, but then as a tucked player, he's essentially playing as a guard again. And he understands the spacing, the left-right responsibilities that come with that, the processing, the additional processing responsibilities of stunts and whatnot that come with that. I think that would be an interesting move, actually. I would love to see it on a rotational basis this week.
Will be interesting. So Cleveland and Mustipher both got in for 3 snaps with Tyler Huntley at the end of the game. Ken, just very quickly, what do you have on them?
Nothing specific. Each made all 3 of their blocks. Each pulled once and connected on it. So that's nice to see. They seem to be having a lot of fun at the end of that game on the sideline. They had a little picture of Ben Cleveland. I don't know what the Ravens' trust issue is with Cleveland at this point, but something is going on there. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether he, is bringing in girls or cooking squirrels or whatever it might be that he's doing that is not what they want. But there's some kind of a work ethic thing, or a study method, or whatever it might be. There are so many dog housings on the Ravens. I would really love it if everybody didn't have to be a square peg round hole situation in terms of learning the Ravens system. So I don't know how much there is already of this in-house, but you get people from all walks of life, all types of backgrounds in the NFL. Let's find some ways to tutor these guys up on system. Not, they've had tutors their whole life in math and other things that they're doing. Not all of them, but, a good number of them have, in terms of getting through high school and whatnot. It just seems to make sense to me that you do tutoring on the playbook as well, that you'd have, some scouts or whatever, that would be their responsibility, is to tutor people in the playbook, or you hire, 4 additional people and assistant coaches, coaching interns, whatever they are. Just think what a job that would be that you'd hardly have to pay for, I would think. You're a coaching intern for the freaking Baltimore Ravens, and your job is to teach Ben Cleveland his set of responsibilities. It'd be a great way to get into the NFL. I think it's made for 20 somethings, which means people in their 20s making $20,000 a year.
There you go.
Perfect.
You're past those days though, Ken, right?
In terms of the being 20, I'm about 40 years past. In terms of making $20,000 a year, I'm right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and the brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit? Cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at a bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boosts, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you with fast, chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. If you're too busy this fall to cook but want to make sure you're eating well, then get Factor. This is what I did. We were moving, packed up all my dishes, everything needed better meals. I signed up for Factor. It's best meals, probably the healthiest I've eaten in a month thanks to these Factor meals. Because with Factor, you can skip those extra trips to the grocery store and the chopping, the prepping, the cleanup, all while still getting flavor and the nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat, enjoy, and then get back to crushing your goals, which for me was trying to move. But now I can't. I need them for work at lunch every day. They're perfect. So this September, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. So head to factormeals.com/Ravens50 and use that code Ravens50 like I did to get 50% off. That's Ravens50 at factormeals.com/Ravens50 to get 50% off your Factor meals.
All right. So appreciate you taking the lead on that, Jason. And let's get into the other skill position players. I'm going to let you take a start. I need to take a real quick run to the bathroom while you do this. I appreciate it if you'll take.
You go ahead, buddy.
You take your first player, talk him through, and I'll pick up on that and add my comments at the end.
No problem, Ken. I'm starting with Zay Flowers first on Ken's list. Ken made a nice list here, so I'll just go with him. Zay Flowers, again, said it in the first show, but drew a ton of attention, I thought, from the Cleveland Browns. And the young buck already has a reputation of his own that he is making, that the other teams were keying on him. Now, of course, Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, both out for this game. I'm not sure what's going on with Nelson Aguilar. He left the game kind of early, too. But Zay Flowers was being keyed on. You saw it on that first Lamar Jackson touchdown run. How many times have you seen Lamar have that much space between the tackles in the red zone? That never happens. I can never, even when the other teams were trying to figure out what Greg Roman was doing, I can't recall Lamar having that much room on a touchdown run. And that was because Zay Flowers was in motion to the right and everybody was cheating to his side. So, has been used a little too gadgety, a little too gimmicky. Ken and I talked about that, but it's certainly earned the reputation to where other teams are going to keep their eye focused on him, and hopefully the Ravens can use that to their advantage. This game, though, a lot of short stuff, not a ton of opportunities. Did make some guys miss, as usual, but Zay Flowers looks great. I just hope that the Ravens can get more out of him, and that may depend on the health of others.
So how do you slow down J.J. Watt in this coming game? Does Flowers play a significant role in that in terms of getting the ball outside on his side of the field, or maybe some fakes to that side of the field where Flowers is I really don't like that much. I do like it in terms of some red zone plays or making space for Lamar in the middle of the field, but I don't like it that much in terms of taking Flowers out of a play by making him a fake.
I mean, I think that you should use Zay Flowers maybe early in the game for something like that. I just don't, to make them aware of it, to defend it. Oh,
Yes.
shoot, they threw it to Zay Flowers the first chance they got, but I just don't want to rely on him for that. I mentioned Keaton Mitchell, or you mentioned Justice Hill, Duvernay. There are other guys that we have that we can use in this quick screen role, quick pass role. What I'd really like to see is some play action, maybe some shots in the intermediate to Zay Flowers. And again, I said, and maybe you heard me before you get back, that this may depend on whether Odell's healthy, Bateman's healthy, who else is out there, because man, they were paying more attention to Zay Flowers than they were to Mark, which just absolutely floored me. Mm-hmm. And it's a general statement. I don't have stats to back that up, but my eyes has told me that these players were cheating towards Zay even more than Mark Andrews, which I'd never seen that for a Ravens receiver.
We don't ever apologize for reporting your observations. People need to inspect them to the degree they're going to, like they inspect mine or anybody else's, but they don't ever apologize for reporting what you're seeing. I thought this is something that's very interesting in terms of what could occur. I wish there were other people who could do it, and I'd like to have all four of those guys active for a game in simple. But I think even though Gordon looked pretty good on the catch, I don't think he gives you anything as a pass blocker. And that's one of the things that's been true his entire career. By the way, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if we did a show together, but I've mentioned this a couple times on the show. PFF, take a look at Melvin Gordon's pass blocking ratings by season for 9 consecutive years from 2015 through 2023. He's declined every single year. Every single year. And this year he's at like a 36 or something. But last year he was at 39, and the year before he might have been 42. But it's a bunch of really low ratings. That
actually blows me away, because he comes with the reputation of a pass blocker. From analysts, I would say, all right, well, he's old and maybe he's a little washed up as far as his explosiveness, but he knows what he's doing back there. He can protect the quarterback and catch the ball. So that actually kind of really surprises me.
This is a place where I really trust PFF to report this pretty accurately. There are PFF can miss on things like anybody can. Their system could fail to capture qualities of him. But when you're looking at one specific element like pass blocking, first of all, the number of total times that he's involved in a play is pretty small, because running backs don't have that many total pass blocking snaps in a game, in a season. And it's really about hits per at bat in terms of what a running back is doing in those cases. Does he really pick up the blitz decently? Does he throw effective chip blocks? It's really very much hits per at bat. So you want to find a good pass block? I'm sure you can find it. Look through some tape. I'm sure you can find a good pass block. So if they're narrative creators who look at film that way and try and find here are the things that I have a real problem with. And
I've seen that. I've seen that. It's easy to come up. Look, it's easy to come up with 4 plays where the player did great, and you're going to say how great he is. It takes someone with some stones to show the good and the bad. So I definitely pride myself on that, in my opinions, where I'm not trying to get a job in the NFL. I'm not trying to get a job with the Ravens. I'm going to call it how I see it. I'm not going to cherry pick 4 good plays and say this player is very good. My opinions are my own, but they're at least you're going to know what you get, good and the bad with me.
You can look in the mirror and not have trouble with yourself for making those. That's good to hear.
That's right.
And I think that is important to show a balanced thing. When you do a performance review for somebody, you always want balance in that performance review that has 3 things you like about the person, and the person may have 11 things that they need to work on but you really only can mention the top three for at least a couple reasons. One is you can't get them the raise you want unless you limit the number of total negatives you're going to put in their performance review. And second, you can't get the person to focus on what they need to improve on unless you're pretty specific about three things. So I think that when I present star treatment, for example, I want to give all 15 notes I have on the player, including 2 bad ones or 4 bad ones or whatever it might be, where he got blocked on a run play or lost in the wash or didn't make a tackle, whatever like that. That's fine. And then you're still looking at a number of good plays that go with that. And I think the balance people actually gravitate towards in terms of credibility.
Yeah. Sorry for the pet peeve there, but I see it and it does bother me. And, that's one thing I like about what I do on my channel is that I will show you the cut up. I will show you every single snap, cut out the fluff, make it nice and digestible, and let you decide for yourself instead of just doing some more, I guess, fan friendly stuff where you're just typing up every player all the time. So
let's move on. Let's talk about. I think I want to talk about Mark Andrews' game a little bit. Now, a couple things about Mark. First of all, did a pretty good job, obviously going up and making that catch in the back of the end zone. And since we gave that some time in the first part of the show, I don't want to spend too much time on that particular outstanding rebound he made to catch that pass, even though it was a low percentage opportunity for him. But I thought Mark Andrews is doing more Mark Andrews things. He's finding space in zones, sitting down in a space where Lamar knows he can find him. And we had a lot of that in this game, and he was really good after the catch in this game.
Yeah, some rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, Ken,
Yep.
dare I say. He had a touchdown that looked kind of like that. But, he's a tough player to bring down. You can tell he's one of those players, Ken, that has an attitude about being tackled. Like he'll want to be stand up or fight for the end instead of just, all right, play's over, going down. Like Cooper Kupp strikes me like that. I've seen him do it. Like even if he's being taken out of bounds, he just wants to stand up out of principle. You know what I mean? It's just principalities involved. So Mark's a tough guy to tackle. It's a tough guy overall, obviously with his type 1 diabetes and everything that he's fought through to be there. No problems. Love the Eric Tomlinson signing because we may need Mark to be a quote unquote slot receiver in this offense until we get more weapons here back.
Yeah, that's a great point about Tomlinson, by the way, that you can activate him 3 times anyway for free. It's not really for free because those activations are hard to come by right now. They need him at other positions.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm looking at the next gen stats. I was incorrect. Lamar Jackson's 7-yard touchdown pass to Mark Andrews had a 17% completion probability per next gen stats. That's from Jamison Hensley on Twitter. 17%.
But no interception probability is listed with that.
No. It's good a throw as you're ever going to see, Coach John Harbaugh said. It's the second most improbable touchdown pass of Jackson's NFL career, according to Next Gen Stats. They do not list the most improbable.
Yeah, I want to think back over that. That's an interesting thing. I wonder if we could identify it without having to look it up and kind of cheat on that. But that'd be.
I want to say there was one at the back of the end zone to Hollywood where he fingertipped it and toe dragged. I would have to think that was up there. I want to say that was a Denver game a couple of years ago at home. Denver game at home.
Could be.
But yeah, it was just a heck of a play by Hollywood. But the way that ball had to arc, the distance traveled, and everything, like he was covered too. I don't know if that brings any visual. If I visually painted it, but it was kind of a fingertip catch at the very, like he was screaming through the end of the end zone, heading straight forward. Fingertip catch, had to drag the back toe.
I'm going to make this comment, and there's going to be some people out there who understand it and get it. But anybody who's ever worked in a finance situation understands the nature of risk-adjusted returns. And I do not believe the risk-adjusted return on that throw to Andrews met the minimum standard, is what I'll just say on it. And it is what it is. I'm glad it worked, but I'm not going to be one of these guys who says every throw is great and the great decision because it worked, and every throw that was incomplete was a bad decision or a bad throw because it didn't. That's just not the case. It's the ones that are opposite that are a good throw that ends up with a bad result, or a bad throw that ends up with a good result, that are the ones you really need to look at.
What is that? No, Ed, go, Ed, go, Ed, go, Ed. Yeah. That might have been one of those for Ken. I almost, I had a little more confidence than you in that one, Ken. I did. I think you're being. I think you're a little tough on him. A little tough on him. Just trying to give you a hard time. So yeah, Mark Andrews though, quite an asset, and I expect the Ravens to lean on him more early, hopefully, than later in the season as things get rolling. Lamar has his go-to guy that he can rely on when things get tough. So hopefully, as some of the kinks get smoothed out of the offense, and we can involve others. But if we got to lean on Andrews for a few weeks, especially with the other wide receivers banged up, I understand. I'll put it that way. I understand. So, but yeah, Andrews, a great game. I'm going to bring up Pat Ricard. Pat Ricard has a role in this offense. And I think that it's amazing to me the fan reaction and the interaction that I get on my channel now that there's a new offensive coordinator, how everybody is appreciating Pat Ricard for what he can do more than they did when he was a huge part of the offense under Greg Roman. But Pat Ricard, I would say, Kenny, you've studied this thing longer than me, but I would say the only other person I'd put above him as a blocker is Nick Boyle, because Nick Boyle could do it, I think, even more versatile than Pat Ricard. Nick Boyle could go out and block safeties level 3 if you needed him to. But Ricard gives you that same kind of versatility in the fact that you line him up on the wing, you line him up as a fullback, you have him in motion as a move blocker, you put him straight in line, you want him to climb to get a linebacker, you need him to collapse somebody on a double team combo block or just a duo block. Ricard can do it all. Ricard can do it all. Very valuable part of this team, and he's really showed. He's kind of bailed us out a little bit, Ken, and with that Kolar and likely not inline blockers, Vokalek not there yet. You have Pat Ricard that can take some of the heavy lifting, even though he's not really a threat to run a route.
Right, he's exceptional, and you mentioned Boyle and what he can do. Well, that is something that Likely can do. Likely can run block out in level 2 and 3. He's got the right size and length to do that. Andrews certainly can, and I think a player like Kolar can as well. It's the inline component of that you're really focusing on, and that's what Ricard gives you, even to a greater degree than Boyle did. Tomlinson would be a guy that gives you hopefully what Boyle did in terms of being able to block at the end of the line, out in level 2, and stand a guy up without losing his feet. So that's the key thing I look for. It doesn't matter whether it's a wide receiver, tight end, whatever. But a guy who has the length advantage over the guy he's blocking and also a significant weight advantage, key thing is don't lose your feet. If you're a lineman out there, that defender is going to try and use his quickness somehow to get underneath you, make you get off your feet, make you lunge for him in a way that will take you out of the play. The great ones, Miles Boykin, guys that the Ravens had at wide receiver position who could really block, they're constantly pivoting like a good right guard. Opening the gate for that runner to continue his run and maintaining that block for a long time until it's much too late for the defender to get off it.
Absolutely. Props to Ricard. Who else do you have, Ken?
Let's talk about Melvin Gordon, because obviously he had a pretty good game this week. 3 runs for 21, a catch for I don't even know how long it was, but a long wheel route down the left sideline for about 34 yards.
36,
23,
maybe
23.
23. Okay, so yeah. 23 on a 3rd and 6. Gutsy throw by Lamar. Mentioned this earlier. So what do you have to say on him?
I appreciate that being part of the plan, that getting the ball to a running back on a wheel route is not something the Ravens have done a whole lot of. But it was nice to see it happen here. And I guess they got one to Dobbins early in the year, didn't they? Before he got hurt in game 1.
Yes.
And then I'm trying to think of the other wheel routes they've thrown so far. I don't believe Hill has had an option on a wheel route yet. Edwards, I don't think, has had one yet, but I might be wrong about that. I just don't remember it.
Was the near completion to Duvernay, where Lamar really fit that thing in there perfect last week? Duvernay couldn't catch it, tried to one-hand it. Was that a wheel route?
You're talking about like right by the pylon? The one right by the pylon? So
yes.
I think that was in week 2. So it was against the Bengals that happened. So he reached out. He went 0 for 3 that day. In terms of I don't think that was a wheel route, but he did start in the backfield a couple times, so it might have been. But that game specifically was the one he was in the backfield, I think, twice at the snap, which, by the way,
it was Cincinnati. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anything to say about Gordon here?
No, just surprised by his success in the run game, and he can catch the ball, so I wasn't surprised at that. But he's had some explosive plays and a near touchdown in this game, where he was pushed out and set up Lamar's, I believe, first touchdown run or second touchdown run. So yeah, we're getting more already than I expected. Props to Melvin Gordon. Give him a lot of credit there. Let's talk about his counterpart, Ken, in Gus Edwards. A lot of action in this game. Seems to have I would say he looks the same to me. If it's scouting wise, he looks powerful. He looks explosive. I just don't know if he's the kind of back that Monken can use as a 1A, let's say, in this system. I think he's going to need a Justice Hill type runner, a J.K. Dobbins runner to be able to do everything that Monken wants to do. So Gus has a very good role. Gus is going to be effective. I expect him to be up there around 5 yards to carry again, which is going to be an amazing feat for Gus. Hell of a player. But I think the Ravens need to keep Justice Hill healthy or to have someone else emerge as this kind of sideways zone runner.
Right. I agree completely. They need an edge threat with speed to run out of sidecar, and that's something that is absolutely essential to create space for Lamar. And, I hope Hill is that guy. I hope Keaton Mitchell is that guy. I hope Devin Duvernay could be that guy if they want to line him up back there. But they have options is the nice thing here. And you can run it both ways. You can stretch that defense horizontally in both directions if you run jet motion going the other way. I think it's always something to try and throw another wrinkle into this offense. I am ready to move on. If you have anything else that you talk about, we could do that. Otherwise, we can move on to some MVPs for this game.
I just want to mention Nelson Aguilar. That's my last thing. Is I hope he's okay. It's something I'm going to be looking for on this injury report. Nervous about it. Nobody asked Harbaugh about it. Of course, he's not volunteering information, but something strikes me as when he came out of that game compared to other people and the amount of Dante Demas we saw and that kind of thing. I just hope that he's okay because he's going to be an important part of this offense, with the health issues we have at receiver.
All right. Would not disagree with that at all. So hopefully, given Aguilar's usage already much more than I would have expected, and he's come through in terms of some good things. It wouldn't even be unreasonable for me if Laquan Treadwell were to suddenly come through. Laquan Treadwell had a reasonable number of the snaps in this game. I want to say it was like 17. He was in there for. So that was, I guess, pretty much after, or some of it anyway, was after, 17 snaps after the loss of Aguilar.
See, you're right. We're going to need it too, Ken. I mean, that's what strikes me as something struck me as weird with Aguilar in this game, as far as he should be in the game and he's not. And we're going to need, I think he's been effective. I think he brings he can be a decoy on speed routes. He can help set up others if we need him to. His length, catch radius, seems to have a pretty good rapport with Lamar. So it might be like where he started off the season as a bonus. Man, we got a nice wide receiver 4 or 5. Like right now, he's a little bit higher on that depth chart because of injuries. Man, like it's Zay Flowers and then Nelson.
He's really the X receiver right now, is what we'd say. I mean, they don't really have a given X, but he's the X. And Laquan Treadwell is the backup X at this point, and it might be that Laquan ends up being the X in this game. If you're starting out with Laquan Treadwell as the X against the Steelers, I'll tell you one thing: you better get the ball to him once early in that game, and show the Steelers defensive backfield that you're willing to throw him the ball. And I don't want to take an unnecessary risk to do it. But Laquan Treadwell did look pretty good during the preseason at times. Had a nice touchdown catch and with some yak involved. I'd love to see him get involved early. And if you stick him out there at the X, which they may have to do, then they have an option.
Hey, and shocker, the Steelers don't have studs at their cornerback position, so it's not like we were facing last week with corners that are playing really well. Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsom, all those guys are in their prime. So yeah.
Yeah, that was actually really scary groups of corners the Ravens played. The fact that Lamar came out of that game without an interception against that group with the kind of pressure they put on him is really remarkable.
Zay Flowers versus Patrick Peterson. Now, pray for Patrick Peterson's knees this week, Ken, because the older gentleman might have a hard time catching up with Zay and moving with him.
What are you talking about? He's great. Why would we expect any decline from a player like Patrick Peterson?
I see you, buddy.
All right, let's talk MVPs from this game if we're good to go on this. You're the guest. Give me your number 3 guy.
I see. This is where I let you down, Ken. As organized as I am, this is the second time I forgot.
You want me to start and you make yours?
Well, sure. Go ahead.
All right. So my number 3 guy is Kevin Zeitler, and it's a little bit of an off the reservation pick, but in a game where the offensive line really struggled, Zeitler came forward and had his best game of the year. It was definitely a possibility that would not happen. And playing next to Fa'alele, back next to Linderbaum again, I thought Zeitler was the best of the Ravens linemen, and really nice to see him put it together for a game. And so he's my number 3 guy.
My number 3 guy, you know what, Ken? I'm going to go with Justice Hill. Got the ball high percentage of the time he was in there. As you outlined, maybe that was the first show. But when he was in there, he was getting the ball. And to come back from the toe injury, his stats would have looked better if not for penalties. Showing that explosiveness, not a huge part of this game because coming back from an injury. But if you're talking about strictly who played well, I mean, he's got to be up there among the top 3.
Completely agree. He's the guy that I was considering instead of Zeitler. Glad we had a difference of opinion there. Why don't you move ahead and go to your number 2 guy?
Sure. I'm going to go with Mark Andrews for the big game-changing play in the back of the end zone, blocking steady. He means a lot to this team. He played well in this game. I think to me was the obvious number 2 next to probably our unanimous number 1 in this game. I
am a unanimous on the number 2 as well. I thought Andrews, if he can put together weeks like this, that's very reasonable. We didn't mention Zay Flowers in here, who probably deserves an honorable mention at the very least from his game with a nice long grab, and I think it was about 14 yards per target. So anytime you're getting that to happen, your wide receivers are getting 10 plus yards per target. You got to be pretty happy about that. And I'm particularly happy with Flowers since his ADOT has been so low in other games that I'm positive about that. But Andrews, 16 yards per target, 5 for 80, caught all 5 balls. One of the really fine games of his career, and he's had a lot of good ones. 1 great yards after the catch play that was about midfield where he went for 36. Another great yards after the catch play where he got into the end zone. Another great catch in the back of the end zone. I mean, he had a little bit of everything in this game.
Yeah, the yak monster, Andrews. Yeah, that was something else. Hey, another honorable mention to me. Maybe the grades won't show it, but Tyler Linderbaum gave me a heck of a lot of confidence to be out there, for him to come back from that injury, be on the field. I just feel, I'm so nervous about this line that to see Tyler Linderbaum out there looking, not missing a beat, it just looked great. It's very comforting. So honorable mention to him for getting healthy and looking like Tyler Linderbaum, and hopefully anchoring that line the rest of the season.
Good choice. Very good choice. Okay, so who's number 1? I can't imagine who it would be.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should pay this guy, the quarterback, number 8. Well, we paid him. Ken. Yes. Hey, a less mobile quarterback, a quarterback who, I mean, just think about this, Ken. If Lamar doesn't make a couple of Lamar-esque plays, if Lamar's ability with his legs and his arm aren't both top tier, NFL's top tier, think about how different of a game this might have been from a play calling aspect. If it's not 17-3 at the half, 21-3, at the half, if it's 10-3, maybe the Browns kick a field goal, they get bad field position. Maybe it's close to a tie game. Think about how this game could have played out. This game was a blowout, I think, because of Lamar Jackson, and it allowed the Ravens to kind of go into cruise control in the second half of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense set the Ravens up a lot in this game with their fine play, with holding and forcing punts. But Lamar Jackson finished the game off in the red zone for the Ravens, and the 4 out of 4 he had there the 12 out of 15 for the year has been just absolutely nothing short of fantastic. And he averaged almost 10 yards a throw in this game, not 10 yards per pass play because of the sacks, but almost 10 yards per reception in this game, and was pretty good in every one of 3 divisions. He was terrific for 15.5 yards with ATS, pretty good with ball out quick, and pretty darn good with pressure as well. So I thought he was clearly the man for the Ravens.
Yep, good game. And overall, Ken, like you said, 2-0 now on the road in the division. Chance to go 3-0 this week in Pittsburgh. I mean, I would have taken 2-1. I'm sure most fans would have taken a 2-1 start in these games. We're already there. It is bonus time, my friend. It's time to go into Pittsburgh, take care of business against a beat-up quarterback, and Mr. Stare Down, Mitch Trubisky, if he plays. I expect either Roquan or PQ to get picks like they did last year, because Mitch will stare down the targets, much like we saw with DTR. So, hey, we're a banged-up team. We're not perfect, but we're in a pretty darn good position here, Ken.
So it looks like the line has tightened up a little bit since I last saw it. 3.5 right now. So it was 2.5, and then it moved to 4.5 when the Trubisky news came out. I personally think Trubisky's probably a little bit better quarterback than Pickett right now, but then it also leaves them with a weaker backup. Mason Rudolph then comes into the picture.
I would say Trubisky more feast and famine, and I would say Kenny Pickett more lower ceiling, higher floor. Is kind of how I pick it. Like Mitch Trubisky can have a big game and use his legs and do some really nice things for you. Pickett. I don't know.
All right. Well, we certainly hope that draft pick doesn't work out for the Pittsburgh Steelers because we're Ravens fans. I don't like having to root for injuries, by the way, in this league. In fact, I just can't stand it. And what it basically comes down to is I really hate that NFL results come down to injuries to such a degree, because what it means is that every team has them, and you're always pissed off when the other team is not having as much bad luck with regard to injuries. In fact, something I've noticed on the Steelers boards, but I don't think it's unique to them, is how long can the Ravens continue to play with a horseshoe up their ass? Was something from a season where the Ravens weren't having any injuries. And it's just the nature of the sport now, is that you got to hope the other teams that you're playing, when you catch them, have some injuries. And unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing I would want to bring my kids into if I had kids. I don't. But, to teach them about a sport that, hey, it's so injury dependent, you just kind of got to hope of way things go. I don't think it's good for sportsmanship or for any of the other components.
No. I was taught, and I teach my kids the same thing. You don't root for injuries. You don't celebrate injuries. Yeah. These are people. They're real people behind those jerseys, and careers end and dreams end. And I go the other way, Ken. I just hope my team is healthy when we play them. Everybody's going to be dealing with injuries. You don't feel sorry for the other team because of their injuries. If Pickett can't go, that's unfortunately the way the game goes. But rooting for injuries, no. I don't think I've disliked the player that much. Maybe Joey Porter, if he stubbed his toe. Joey Porter stubbed his toe, I'd say, okay, that's good. That's good. But no, Ken, in all seriousness, I appreciate you having me, buddy. I always try to make you smile a couple times.
Always a pleasure talking football with you, and thanks for working through this episode where I'm obviously a little under the weather and providing a lot of the necessary color here. It's always very much appreciated.
Barry White, Samuel L. Jackson.
Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Sure. Huddle It Up Films, or at Huddle It Up Films on Twitter. Thank you for having me on, Ken. I really appreciate you, buddy.
All right. If you're out there and you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I'm not going to give you any more detail on that this show, but I will get back to you. I promise on that. Jason, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Ken. Have a good night, buddy.
You too. I'll talk to you next time on Film Study.